Hello friends, so today we are talking about algebraic properties. Now properties are just rules that we use when we are solving equations, and typically we don't even think about using them when we're using them. So instead of giving all the definitions up front, I will give them to you as we go. So algebraic properties are used to solve equations. So one way of finding out what algebraic properties we are using is to just solve that equation. So if we have negative 3.9 plus 2.7x equals 1.77, we want to get x by itself. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of this negative 3.9 by adding it. And of course we add to both sides. Put a 0 on the end if that helps you to add properly. So that goes away, and we have 2.7x equals positive 5.67. So what did we do? We added to both sides. So we used the addition property of equality. That's simple. If we added to both sides, we kept the equation equal. We used the addition property of equality. All right, but now we have the rest of the equation to solve. We still need to get x by itself. So 2.7x equals 5.67. We divide both sides by that 2.7 to get x by itself. And we get x equals 2.1. So what did we do? Well, we divided. We used the division property of equality. It's that easy. If we added, we used the addition property of equality. If we divided both sides, we used the division property of equality. Now, your properties of equality only apply when you are doing it to both sides of the equation. So to give another example, let's see, we've got negative, that is not in view, negative 31.2 equals 3.8 minus z over 0.1. And that is a z, the end of the alphabet there. So again, here we want to solve this equation for our variable, in this case z. Z has division happening to it. It also has this guy hanging out, so that's going to be our first thing to deal with. First, we need to subtract that 3.8 from both sides. So that cancels there, and we should get negative 35 equals negative z over 0.1. So what did we do? We subtracted. We used the subtraction property of equality. If we do the same thing to both sides, whatever that operation is, that's the property of equality we used. So then continuing on, we have negative 35 equals, I'm going to put this negative in the bottom here so it's not on the z, because that's going to make it easier for me, I think. So we have this now, we have z over negative 0.1. We're going to want to multiply both sides by negative 0.1 to get rid of that. So that cancels, and we just have z over here equals 3.5. Okay, so what did we do? We multiplied. We used the multiplication property of equality. Hopefully this is making sense so far. Whatever we do, that we name the thing that we have done, and that's our property. We also have a couple other properties that are slightly less straightforwardly named, but honestly not that much different. So let's say we have a problem like this. 2 times the quantity 4x minus 2 equals 44. So what's our instinct when we see a number outside of a set of parentheses? Our instinct is to draw arrows and do some multiplication. So we have 2 times 4x minus 2 times 2 is 44. Because remember, we are just multiplying this by this and this by this. Well, what have we done here? This is the distributive property. We have distributed. So if you recognize that you are drawing these arrows and doing this multiplication, you are using the distributive property, and you probably already knew that, because that's one of the ones that people tend to remember. Okay, from here, let's solve this equation. So now we just have 8x minus 4 equals 44. So we add 4. That's the addition property of equality. And we have 8x equals 48. And then we divide both sides by 8. That's the division property of equality. And that's it. We name the things that we have done, and those are the properties that we are using. Now I have a slightly more complicated one for us. Negative 4 times the quantity negative 3x minus 4 minus 2x plus 1 equals negative 1. That's an equal sign. Okay, so how do we solve this? First things first, we see parentheses. We want to deal with those. So we are going to draw our arrows and do our multiplication. We are distributing. We are using the distributive property. So that gets us 12x plus 16, oops, not equals, minus 2x plus 1 equals negative 1. Now what's next is we have some like terms here, right? We've got 12x and negative 2x, and we've got positive 16 and positive 1. Now, without even thinking about it, we are using a property here when we are combining our like terms. Technically, what we are doing is we're rearranging the equation so that our like terms are next to each other, so they're easier to then go ahead and simplify. So that rearranging, that is called the commutative property. Commutative. So commutative, the base word is commute, which means to move, to go places. You commute to school, you commute to work. So the commutative property is just what lets us move things around in the equation so we can solve it easier. So we moved stuff around. We flip-flopped the 16 and the negative 2x, so we have 12x minus 2x plus 16 plus 1 equals negative 1. So now we can just combine those like terms. So 12x minus 10x, 12x minus 2x is 10x, plus 17 equals negative 1. And then from here, what do? We will subtract 17 from both sides. That is the subtraction property of equality. And that should get us 10x equals, negative 18. And then we finish it off by dividing by 10, which is, of course, the division property. Now, when we are talking about problems that are asking us to identify the properties that we use, the actual answer we get, whatever x equals, is not that important. What's important is knowing the steps that we followed. So if you know what you've done, you can name it, and that's what a lot of these questions are going to be looking for. All right, see you soon.